she emerged from the darkness. And with her came secrets that could swallow everything. Nothing was safe. No one was who they seemed to be. Some truths are too dangerous to be spoken aloud. Callie Monroe knew this better than anyone. She had been running for days, her heart in her throat and her soul wounded by secrets she should never have uncovered. The sound of the rain on the windshield, the biting cold of the Oregon wind, and the memory of the empty eyes of the man she once called father kept her awake. That late afternoon, she walked into a forgotten diner on the side of Highway 101, trying to appear invisible. But fear has a scent, a rhythm, and she exuded both. Ethan Cole watched her from the counter, with the attentive gaze of someone who had been to war, and perhaps still was. He didn't know who she was, but he recognized the look. Someone on the verge of collapse, someone who needed help but was afraid to ask. Then a black SUV with no license plates parked outside. Callie paled. Ethan felt the air change. There was a tension that precedes a storm. In seconds everything broke. Doors opened, voices shouted, and the instinct for survival spoke louder. They didn't know it yet, but that encounter would change everything. Welcome to my channel. Like the video, subscribe and hit the bell because every week there are more stories that thrill, move, and make your heart beat differently. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and old grease, the kind that clings to your skin and bones. Callie entered like lightning across the night, her eyes scanning the place quickly. She chose a corner table, her back to the wall where she could see the door. Her soaked coat dripped onto the floor. Her hands trembled, but she tried to hide it. She ordered a coffee she didn't touch. The waiter didn't even notice her. But someone did. Ethan Cole, 34 years old, unshaven, with calloused hands from working with engines and difficult memories. He was there to fill up his old pickup truck and kill some time. He wasn't looking for trouble, just peace. But peace at that moment seemed like a distant lie. When he saw Callie walk in, he knew. It wasn't just her hurried manner. It was her eyes, the tension in her neck, the backpack clutched tightly to her body. This wasn't just fear. It was desperation. Outside, a black SUV with no license plates glided to the shoulder of the road. It sat there idling, its engine rumbling softly. Callie's eyes met his for a second, long enough for Ethan to realize. She needed to get out of there. She stood up. It came. 3 men in black. Ethan acted on instinct. "This way," he said, opening the back door. She hesitated for half a second, then ran. Behind them, shouts, broken glass, a customer throwing himself to the floor. The old bell above the door rang for the last time that night. In the parking lot, under the rain, Ethan and Callie ran towards the unknown. 2 strangers united by something they couldn't yet name, but which burned hot enough to keep them both alive. The urgency to flee. Ethan's old pickup truck roared with effort as he turned the key. The rain intensified, beating hard against the windshield as the engine finally caught. Callie was in the passenger seat, breathless, her eyes still fixed on the rearview mirror. The black SUV would appear behind them with a terrifying calm, like a predator that doesn't need to run to kill. "Who are they?" Ethan asked, without taking his eyes off the road. "I don't know." Callie's answer came too quickly. An obvious lie. He didn't press it. Not yet. The SUV accelerated. It was getting closer. High beams. Intimidation. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, turning sharply onto a secondary road covered in fog and mud. The old engine protested but obeyed. The rival vehicle followed them. No horns. No explicit threats. Just the constant silent presence like a bad omen. In the passenger seat, Callie tried to hide her panic, but her ragged breathing betrayed her. Ethan noticed her hand clutching the backpack so tightly that her knuckles were white. "Hold on tight," he said. The pickup truck cut through the dirt road, bouncing over every pothole, sliding around tight curves. Trees closed in on the road, as if the world were narrowing around them. Shortcut. A miracle. Ethan remembered an old trail through the hills, used by hunters years ago. He turned left suddenly, disappearing among the trees. Silence. Only the sound of their breathing and the rain on the metal roof. The SUV drove straight past. They had vanished for now. In the darkness of the forest, the two strangers finally stopped. Callie looked at Ethan, still distrustful. He looked back, still not understanding. But one thing was clear. She wasn't just a scared girl. She was running from something that wanted to kill her. The dirt trail led them to an abandoned workshop on the outskirts of Forest Hills. Covered by weeds and thyme, the wooden structure creaked in the wind but offered shelter. Inside, the smell of rust and old oil mixed with the silence. Ethan parked the truck and turned off the engine. The storm now seemed distant. Callie sat on the concrete floor, her body exhausted. She still held the backpack as if the world depended on it. Ethan said nothing for a while. He just watched. He knew what the look of someone who had lost everything was like. He had seen it in the mirror. "You can trust me," he said finally. "I've trusted the wrong people too many times," she replied without looking at him. Later, while she slept sitting up, Ethan saw the backpack lying next to her. Not out of curiosity, but out of instinct. He opened the zipper. Inside, among clothes and papers, there was a pen drive hidden in a sock. He hesitated, then connected it to the notebook he carried in the truck. Documents, contracts, spreadsheets with coded names, illegal transactions, and the name, Hargrove Dynamics, a giant corporation. He knew it. Everyone knew it. Callie woke up to the sound of the mouse click. "Where did you get this?" She took a while but answered. "My stepfather runs that company. They do things that can't get out of there. I saw something I shouldn't have. I recorded it. Now they want to silence me." Ethan closed the notebook slowly. "This isn't just running away. This is war." She nodded, her eyes full of weariness and truth. There, between crumbling walls, something was born. Not complete trust, but the beginning. Fragile thread. And for two wounded fugitives, that was already much more than nothing. Night fell heavily over Forest Hills. Outside, the sounds of the forest were muffled by the wind. Inside the workshop, the dim light of the notebook illuminated the tired faces of Callie and Ethan. The files had been analyzed line by line. There was no doubt. Hargrove Dynamics was involved in money laundering, illegal weapons testing, and there was a list of secret payments to politicians and judges. "This here," Ethan said without taking his eyes off the screen, "could bring down half the government structure." Callie didn't answer. She just crossed her arms and stared at the floor. There was pain in her silence. "Fear too. Why didn't you go to the police?" he asked. She laughed without humor. "They have people everywhere. Police, press, courts. I'm just a girl with evidence that no one wants to see. You saw what they did. And that was just the beginning." Ethan stepped away, taking a deep breath. The ex-military man inside him was screaming. He could run, hand Callie over, hide. But there was something in her eyes, something between courage and despair, that prevented him from turning his back. "They'll come after you," he said. "After us. I know. And even so. You want to go through with this?" She looked straight at him. Without hesitation. "I've already lost everything, Ethan. I just don't want to lose who I am." Silence. And then he made his choice. "All right. Let's finish this." Callie nodded, surprised. For the first time, a trace of relief touched her face. At that moment, they were no longer two strangers on the run. They were allies. And Ethan knew. Protecting Callie wasn't just about justice. It was about redemption. Dawn brought a strange silence to the abandoned workshop. After hours of little talking and too much thinking, Ethan slept leaning against a pile of tires, the old rifle within reach. Callie seemed restless, pacing back and forth, checking her backpack, watching the darkness through the cracks in the wall. At 4 a.m, she made her decision. She looked at Ethan for a long time. There was something in her gaze. Perhaps guilt, perhaps gratitude. She picked up her backpack slowly, trying not to make a sound. Her fingers trembled as she touched the handle of the back door. It wasn't a cowardly escape. It was protection. It was the fear of seeing him die for something she carried. When Ethan woke up, the sun was already beginning to gild the sky. The workshop was empty. The computer closed. The backpack gone. Callie vanished. For a moment he stood still, absorbing the emptiness. Then he got up quickly, checking the area, searching the surroundings. Nothing. No sign of a struggle. No trace. Just the absence. His first thought was anger. She had used him, taken what she needed and fled. But soon another feeling came, more unsettling: worry. That girl who said she had lost everything was now alone again. And with the pen drive, Ethan sat on the floor, the rifle beside him, rubbing his face hard. He could let her go, continue his life, forget. But that wasn't how he worked. He stood up. He looked at the road and decided if she left, he would go after her. Because even without understanding why, it was already too late to leave her alone. It took Ethan 2 days to find the right lead. A truck driver said he had seen a young woman resembling Callie being forcibly taken into a remote industrial area, where Hargrove Dynamics maintained a deactivated facility. Or so they said. The place was surrounded by high fences, security cameras, and a silence that screamed conspiracy. In the dead of night, Ethan arrived at the perimeter. He was dressed in black from head to toe, his backpack loaded with tools and ammunition. He was no longer the roadside mechanic. He was the soldier back on a mission. But this time it was personal. Callie was in a concrete room, handcuffed to a chair, her face marked by hours of interrogation. A man in a suit, cold as steel, said that all it would take was a signature, a yes on the right paper, and it would all be over. But she wouldn't yield. Outside, Ethan cut through the fence, silenced 2 guards, and entered from the side. Calculated, precise. When he heard her voice, weak but firm, something inside him ignited. The invasion was swift and brutal. Ethan burst in firing, using everything he knew to neutralize Hargrove's men. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Callie, seeing him at the door, couldn't believe it. "You came," she murmured, surprise and relief in her eyes. "I told you I wouldn't leave you alone." He released her and pulled her out. Gunshots echoed in the corridors. They ran side by side, just like the first day. Only now they knew who they were to each other. Say, darkness, forest, freedom. Ethan stopped, panting, staring at the building behind them. "That was just the beginning," he said. Callie nodded. And together they disappeared into the night. The next morning, hidden in a cheap motel miles away, Callie breathed with difficulty. Her hands still trembled, but her gaze had changed. Now there was something firm there. A decision. "It's time," she said. "This evidence needs to get out to the world." Ethan nodded. They called an investigative reporter Callie knew from a previous life. Someone who had already tried to expose Hargrove but had been silenced. Upon hearing the company's name and the content of the files, the journalist's tone changed. In less than an hour she was there with cameras, recorders and courage. Callie handed over the pen drive like someone handing over a loaded weapon. She told everything on camera. Names, places, data, dates. Ethan remained silent beside her like an invisible guard. The broadcast happened the next day. Within minutes, social media exploded. Arrests began. Investigations were reopened. One of Hargrove's directors fled the country. Callie's stepfather tried to deny everything, but the documents were too clear. The house of cards came crashing down. While the country watched the fall of an empire, Callie and Ethan disappeared from sight. Not out of cowardice, but because they had already done their part. On the side of an empty road, the two stopped to breathe. No more chases. No more gunshots. No more fear. "We did it," Ethan said, looking at the horizon. "No, not yet," Callie replied. "But now we have a chance." He smiled. For the first time, truly. And with the past crumbling behind them, they sped towards a new beginning. Havenport was a town forgotten by maps, where the sea lapped slowly against the rocks and the mornings came shrouded in mist. Colorful wooden houses lined the coast, and the air smelled of salt, pine, and promises. It was there that Ethan and Callie decided to start over. Coastal Torque Garage was born from an abandoned shed near the pier. Ethan cared for the engines with the patience of someone who had lived through the worst. Callie served customers, fixed what she could, and smiled more than she thought possible. The noise of cars replaced the sounds of sirens. The sea was now their soundtrack. In the late afternoon, they drank coffee sitting on the porch of the workshop, watching the boats return to the bay. Neither of them spoke much about what had happened. They didn't need to. It was in their eyes, in their small gestures, in the way she rested her head on his shoulder, and how he always held her as if he knew the world might still try to take her away. The scars were there, visible and invisible. But there, in Havenport, they no longer hurt as much as before. They told a story, one of survival, of struggle, and of love, even if still unnamed. A neighborhood child once asked, "Are you married?" Callie laughed. Ethan just looked at her and said, "Not yet." The answer hung in the air, like everything worth building slowly. And so, among tools, sea air, and silent glances, two fugitives found what seemed impossible: peace. The day dawned enveloped in a thick fog, as if the world had decided to whisper instead of shout. The waves broke gently on the Havenport coast, and the sound of the distant lighthouse was the only sign of time passing. Callie walked along the cold sand, her boots sinking slightly into the damp ground. She was alone, or thought she was, until she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't turn around. She knew who it was. She always knew. Ethan stopped beside her, his hands in the pockets of his coat and the wind ruffling his hair. "Do you still think about leaving?" he asked without looking at her. "Every day," she replied. Then she smiled. "But I don't want to." A comfortable silence settled between them. And then, without warning, he knelt on the sand, pulling a small wooden box worn by time from his pocket. It wasn't an expensive jewel. It was simple, direct, like him. "I'd risk everything again for you. Always," he said, his voice firm but his eyes watery. Callie brought her hand to her mouth, surprised. She cried unashamedly, without restraint. It wasn't sadness. It was the end of fear. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "About you. I always have been." She knelt with him, her face close to his. The kiss came before the answer. But when she finally spoke, it was like the sun breaking through the fog. "Then let's build what they tried to destroy." On the deserted beach, two survivors promised what the whole world had tried to deny them: a future. And at that moment, with the sea as their witness, Callie Monroe and Ethan Cole finally found the place where they belonged. Together, forever. Some stories end in silence, others in applause. But this one ends with a certainty that, even in chaos, it is still possible to start over. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you felt it, vibrated, saw a piece of yourself in Callie, or in Ethan. Maybe you remembered someone, or yourself. And if this story touched you in some way, then don't let it get lost in the wind. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell, because every week, there are more stories that thrill, move, and make your heart beat differently. Oh, and tell me here in the comments, would you have run or stayed? See you in the next chapter. Until then.